Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a green-white humans deck, which is an aggressive creature deck that cares about the human creature type, and we have a lot of different humans in this deck that will get better the more humans we have, and that will boost other humans in the deck. So let's take a look at the entire deck, starting out with Kytheon, Hero of Akros, all the way back from Magic Origins, and it's a very powerful one, single white for a 2-1 that can also become indestructible with his activated ability, and if we attacked with multiple creatures, then Kytheon will transform into Gideon Battleforged, which can also become a 4-4 creature and has some other interesting abilities on top. And then the much simpler Expedition Envoy, which is just a 1-mana 2-1, but it is a human, so that's the important part. And since we do have a lot of Anthem effects in this deck, having a cheap human to put into play is where you want to be with this deck. Then we also have Hanweir, Militia Captain, another very powerful card if unchecked. She's a 2-mana 2-2, and at the beginning of our upkeep, if we control 4 or more creatures, we can transform the Militia Captain, and she becomes a Westvale Cult Leader that will spawn a 1-1 human every turn, and the power and toughness is equal to the number of creatures we control, so very powerful when unanswered. Then we have Thalia's Lieutenant, one of the many creatures in this deck that will care about other humans we control, since when the Lieutenant enters the battlefield we get to put a +1/+1 counter on each other human we control, and whenever another human enters the battlefield under our control, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on the Lieutenant, so nice Anthem effects for humans, and she also becomes larger with every subsequent human we play. Then we have a Selfless Spirit, which you may have guessed is not a human, but it is a very powerful card in the deck since it protects us from a number of sweeper effects and removal spells in general, and it's still a 2-mana 2-1 flyer, so still a very powerful card by itself, and it also happens to synergize nicely with a Renegade Rallier, and it can also enable Revolt for the same Renegade Rallier, which we will get to in a second. Then we have Consul's Lieutenant, double white for a 2-1 first striker with Renown 1, so that's also from Origins, and when it connects with an opponent, if the Lieutenant isn't renowned already, then it will get a +1/+1 counter permanently, and then in the future when the Consul's Lieutenant attacks, if it is renowned, then other attacking creatures we control get +1/+1 until end of turn, so if it is renowned it will make it easier for other creatures to attack as well. And of course, First Strike is a very powerful ability. Then we have Duskwatch Recruiter, one of the very few cards in this deck that can provide card advantage, so that's why it's so important, and we're running all 3 copies. It's a human on the front side that can look for another creature in the top 3 cards if we use the activated ability, and it also has the classic werewolf mechanic, so it can transform into the Howler, which is not a human, so keep that in mind with the other humans in this deck that care about other humans, and this will make our creature spells cheaper, which goes nicely with the ability on the front side, since you can find creatures with the front side and then cheaply deploy them with the back side, and that's where you want to be when you have a bunch of Anthem effects and a bunch of creatures in hand. Then we also have Hamlet Captain, which is pretty similar to the Consul's Lieutenant, but this one doesn't need to get renowned. And when it attacks or blocks, so this also works when he blocks, other humans we control get +1/+1 until end of turn, so this only checks for humans, which is the downside. Then we have Declaration in Stone, one of the few removal spells in this deck, and since we are an aggressive creature deck, we don't really mind giving the opponent a clue token, because hopefully they will be dead before they get to profit from it. And of course that gives us access to a very cheap and efficient removal spell that exiles an opposing creature, and also very good against opposing tokens, since you can exile multiple tokens with the same name without having to give the opponent any clue tokens. We also have 1 copy of Thalia, Heretic, Cathar, which is another very powerful human with very relevant abilities, but it is legendary and we have a lot of other 3-drops we want to play, so only the 1 copy. Speaking of powerful 3-drops, we have Tireless Tracker, which is one of the main reasons we want to play green, and is another way to gain card advantage besides the Duskwatch Recruiter, since whenever we play a land, we get a clue token, and whenever we sack a clue, we can give the Tireless Tracker a +1/+1 counter, and of course also a human. We also have Citadel Castellan, which is also all the way back from Origins. So a 2/3 Vigilance with Renown 2, so when she connects with an opponent, she will get 2 +1/+1 counters and become renowned. And of course, with all the Anthem effects that we have in the deck, it's going to be pretty easy to boost up the Citadel Castellan, so it's easier for her to become renowned. And then we also have a Renegade Rallier, which is an interesting addition from Revolt, which apparently is now part of the starter box as well. And this one has Revolt, so when a permanent we control left the battlefield this turn, then we have basically enabled Revolt, as you can read here. And so that gives us the ability to return a creature with converted mana cost 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. And of course we have a lot of different powerful 2-drops that we would not mind getting back from the graveyard. And Selfless Spirit in particular, we can sacrifice to not only enable Revolt, but it's also a creature that will end up in the graveyard that we can then get back with the Revolt ability itself. And of course Renegade Rallier, also a human. Then we're also playing with Always Watching, which is a powerful Anthem effect, giving non-token creatures we control +1/+1 and Vigilance, so it can also help all those Renown creatures get through for damage, since they will be that much bigger. Then we also have one copy of Kytheon's Irregulars, which also has Renown, although the relevant ability here is the tap ability for double white, which can have a very big impact on any board. Then we also have Heron's Grace Champion, which for 4 mana is a 3/3 with Flash and Lifelink, so we can play it at instant speed, and when the champion enters the battlefield, other humans we control get +1/+1 and Lifelink until end of turn. So this is just an amazing card when you're trying to race with an opponent, or if you're playing against, let's say, a burn deck, then if you have any sort of board presence, play the champion and attack with a bunch of lifelinking creatures. It's going to be pretty difficult for the opponent to still win. And also the Flash ability plays quite nicely with cards like Duskwatch Recruiter that have an activated ability, but you can still, if you don't use the ability, flash in the champion, or vice versa. Then we're also playing Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. The night tokens he makes are not humans, but it's still a very powerful card and probably the best 4 mana play in the entire game. And of course, when you plus Gideon, he does become a human, so you can plus him before playing any sort of synergy card that combines with humans. For example, you can plus him and then play your Thalia's Lieutenant to still give Gideon a +1/+1 counter, which will actually stay on the Planeswalker when you activate him the following turn. Then we also have one copy of Archangel Avacyn, which kind of fills the same role as Selfless Spirit, which is to protect our creatures from sweeper effects and removal. And it also plays very well with Selfless Spirit, since we can sacrifice a Selfless Spirit to make our Archangel Avacyn transform into Avacyn the Purifier, which can wreak havoc on the board and quickly kill any opponent. And of course, Avacyn also has Flash, so another creature that plays well with our Duskwatch Recruiter. And then finally we have Ajani Unyielding, which is another very powerful Planeswalker. The +2 can let us get some card advantage by looking at the top 3 and putting any non-land permanent in our hand. And we do have a lot of non-land permanents since most of the deck are creatures. Then the -2 can exile a creature, gain the opponent a bunch of life equal to that creature's power. And then the ultimate is also pretty awesome. And then the mana base, we've got 11 plains, 4 forests, then 2 Canopy Vista, 2 Sunpetal Grove, and then 4 Evolving Wilds, which can also enable Revolt for our Renegade Rallier, and also go well with our Tireless Tracker, giving us 2 landfall triggers basically. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener. We're on the play. Kind of an awkward hand since we can't play the Expedition Envoy turn 1. But then again, we don't have a turn 2 play, so I think this is fine. We have some powerful 3-drops. And the question here is, do we want to play Evolving Wilds turn 1? since it is an enabler for Revolt, but I think just getting another white source here is going to be important, since we do have a bunch of double white cards in the deck. So let's just fetch right now and get that out of the way. So turn 2 Expedition Envoy, turn 3 Castellan, turn 4 Renegade Rallier. That's what we're looking at. Opponent with a swamp, so they could have a fatal push here. Alright, so we get to double Expedition Envoy. So glad we fetched our planes there. And do we see end of turn fatal push? We do not. Alright. And a Foundry of the Consuls from the opponent, so they could be on a mono black deck, maybe playing the Foundry, as we see in Always Watching, which is quite nice, but I think we want to deploy some more creatures first. So let's attack with both, see what happens. If the opponent kills one of them, we could Renegade Rallier and get it back. Instead we're just gonna play out the Castellan, which combined with Always Watching and maybe the Renown could maybe get big enough to survive something like a Languish or another -X effect. Opponent with a fatal push end of turn on the Expedition Envoy, so either they drew it the previous turn or they wanted to wait and see what else we played. As we see another colorless land from the opponent. Alright, so instead we see an Eldrazi, so opponent with perhaps a bunch of those colorless Eldrazi creatures. Matter Reshaper, not a bad one. So we can attack with both, but I don't really want to trade the Castellan with the Matter Reshaper, so instead we're gonna play the Always Watching, so that our Castellan can attack into the Matter Reshaper. Question is if we also want to attack with the Envoy, and I don't think we do, since we can wait until next turn and then attack, offer the trade, and then play a Renegade Rallier. So let's play the planes, play Always Watching, and then just attack with the Castellan. And I don't think our opponent's gonna chump here. Alright, they are. So let's see what they get from the Matter Reshaper. Just a land. Alright, so it did ramp the opponent a little bit here. So if they have something like a Reality Smasher, they could blank our Castellan. Instead it's a Bearer of Silence. And we're gonna sacrifice our Expedition Envoy here to the effect. But this one can't block, so our Castellan is gonna get through. Of course, the downside here is that we have no way to enable Revolt for the Renegade Rallier. So the question is if we even want to play out the Renegade Rallier here. I think we do, just in case our opponent has another one of these Bearers of Silence. And then we want to have another creature we can sacrifice. So if we find a land, we can play Ajani, which is going to be quite decent. Let's see if our opponent has a heavy hitter. Instead of just a scrap heap, another creature that can't block. So not the best defensive creature. And we are currently ahead on board. So the bearer gets in for 2. And nothing else. And looks like the opponent doesn't have the necessary answers. I guess they could still have something like a Spatial Contortion at instant speed here. Maybe they have Titan's Presence, which is the 3-mana colorless removal spell that they have to reveal a creature. Either way, we are attacking here. And probably just running out another Renegade Rallier. Oh, let's see what the opponent has. They did find double black, but even a Languish here would not kill our Castellan. Alright, there's a forest, so I think we attack with everyone and then play Ajani to draw some cards. But I think this is gonna do it, unless I guess our opponent could sacrifice a Founder of the Consuls, but then we still have 3 lethal attackers, so even if they double jump with those Thopter tokens, they're still dead. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener. We're on the draw, not a perfect hand since we do have 2 Always Watchings, which can be a bit much, but then again we have some solid creatures, and hopefully with the extra draw step we can find a 3rd land here, and we do have a lot more plains than forests, so I think I like keeping, and hopefully we can find a 3rd land. There we go. Alright, let's play out the plains. Turn 2 Militia Captain, turn 3 either Thalia or Castellan. I think we play those before dropping our Anthems, unless we have another reason. Opponent red-black aggro here with a turn 2 Karizav, which we don't have a great way of blocking here with our Militia Captain, but I think we still run it out, since we want to start applying pressure ourselves. But next turn the Castellan could be able to block the 2/1 monkey token when that gets generated. So opponent gets in for 3, don't want to trade, and the Karizav has Menace, so can't block that one. And let's see if the opponent adds another creature to the board, or maybe he wants to kill the Militia Captain. Alright, they just say go, stuck on 2 lands, so their hand is all action. So pretty likely that they do have removal spells here, but yeah, I'm just gonna attack with the Militia Captain, see what happens. And then play out the Castellan, I think. Opponent has a Fatal Push. So I think I like playing the Castellan more than the Thalia, because there are a bunch of 1 mana red removal spells that deal exactly 2 damage, which could kill Thalia on the cheap, while the Castellan with 3 toughness is a lot more difficult for the opponent to kill. And then say go. And then next turn we can maybe go Evolving Wilds plus either Thalia or the Always Watching. So opponent attacks, and I will block the monkey token here. If your opponent does want to use a burn spell to finish off the Castellan, or maybe a pump spell, then that's fine by me. Might see an Invigorated Rampage here. Instead, opponent lets this happen. Maybe they have a burn spell post-combat. Instead, no, they just let this happen. I think I like attacking and then playing Thalia, rather than playing Always Watching and maybe having the Castellan killed. So let's attack first to get the Castellan renowned. That works, so now 5 toughness. Our opponent could still have maybe Lightning Axe plus Fiery Temper, in which case playing Thalia could be pretty bad if our opponent then Lightning Axes the Castellan and then uses Fiery Temper on the Thalia, because we would lose our entire board basically. Maybe that means playing Always Watching is better. Then again, if they play a 3rd land and just unlicensed Disintegration the Castellan, we lose all our board presence. So I think it's close here, but I think I will play out the Thalia and hope our opponent doesn't have exactly Lightning Axe plus Fiery Temper. Play out the Evolving Wilds, get that tapped land out of the way, and this is gonna get a Plains. Opponent did not do anything end of turn, so that's promising. They did find their 3rd land, so we might see a bunch more removal spells being played here. Since with a Thalia in play, our opponent is incentivized to use removal rather than creatures. Instead, it looks like our opponent has given up. We see Olivia mobilized for war. So 3/3 flyer, but does come into play tapped. Karizav didn't have any great attacks there, and we're just gonna get a Plains. And now we get to Declaration plus Always Watching, although Duskwatch adds an interesting wrinkle. So I guess it's fine to play the Duskwatch plus Always Watching, and then next turn we can maybe play another Always Watching plus Declaration, so having the extra creature in play is going to be better for us. But we can start by playing Always Watching, attacking with both. And our creatures now can also play defense, thanks to the vigilance. That works. Opponent takes 9 damage. Play the Duskwatch, and then next turn, unless our opponent has a bunch of removal, we should be able to clear away for a lethal attack. Opponent doesn't attack with Olivia. Duskwatch would transform here. The question is, do we want to use the ability or not? If we don't use the ability, we can still Always Watching plus Declaration, but then again we can still just use the ability here and then still use Declaration in stone. So I think I like using the Duskwatch ability here, and we found Expedition Envoy and Tireless Tracker. Obviously Tireless Tracker is the better card here, even though it's not super mana efficient in this spot. Although with the Howler transforming here, it does only cost us 2 mana. So the question here is, do we Declaration any of these creatures, or do we just play another Tireless Tracker? I think I like playing Tireless Tracker, and I want to do this main phase in case our werewolf dies somehow. So now we get to attack with everyone. Opponent does have Unlicensed Disintegration for Thalia, but I still like attacking with both. I don't mind trading the Howler for Olivia. Opponent just chumps. And next turn we can probably just Declaration for the win. So our opponent's struggling a bit in the early game with their mana situation, and we were able to capitalize. So our opponent with a Pia and Kieran making 2 Thopter tokens, which we can clear away with the Declaration if we want to. Opponent discards a card with Olivia to give Pia and Kieran haste and a +1/+1 counter. They just attack with Olivia, but now we just get to Declaration the Thopter tokens and finish off our opponent. And we can even, if we want to, play Tireless Tracker, play a land, get 2 clue tokens, and then use Declaration on the Thopters, attack with everyone, and that's gonna be more than enough. Let's see the top card. And we were gonna draw an Evolving Wilds, which would have made a bunch more clue tokens thanks to the Tireless Trackers. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks quite good here. We've got a nice curve of 1-drop into 2-drop into 3-drop, and then of course we've got the Ajani in our opener. Not really where we want to see him, but I guess it's something to work towards. Opponent leads with a Swamp, so let's attack for 2 and play out the Hamlet Captain. So what would our best draw be at this point? Probably just Gideon on turn 4. Alright, we see Forerunner of Slaughter from the opponent, so they could be on a red-black vehicles deck, which uses a Forerunner to give artifacts haste. Can also crew Heart of Kirin quite nicely. So let's go ahead and attack with both. I don't mind trading either of these. And then play out the Castellan. Opponent does trade, alright, that's fine. So hopefully the Castellan can connect here. Instead, it looks like our opponent has Unlicensed Disintegration they're gonna use on the Castellan. But yeah, I think we just play out the Lieutenant anyways, just to pump up the Envoy. And get in for 3, I'm assuming. Yep. Bit risky from the opponent there if we have something like Blossoming Defense, which I did consider, but it was a bit hard on the mana, since we are just splashing green, so we're not guaranteed to have it in the early game. Scrapheap Scrounger, can't block. And anything else? Alright, Syndicate Trafficker. Opponent's on the defensive, which is unusual for that deck. But yeah, I think we play out the Lieutenant here to pump the other Lieutenant. Attack with both, don't mind trading. And Ajani can also do a nice job of exiling the Scrapheap Scrounger at some point. Alright, they trade with the Envoy. That's fine. And we will play the land in case we find a land number 6 for Ajani. Opponent with land number 5. And Smuggler's Copter is not what we wanted to see here, since that can kind of block both of our creatures. Alright, never mind. We'll attack with both. So if our opponent blocks the Consul's Lieutenant, 3-power first strike is gonna kill the Copter, and the Heron's Grace Champion, when it comes into play, is also going to pump the Thalia's Lieutenant. And I probably should have let the opponent loot first with the Copter before playing the Champion, unless they can loot into a cheap burn spell that can maybe finish off one of our creatures, in which case playing the Champion first prevents that. So it's a toss-up. But usually giving the opponent more information is not what you want to do. And they do have the Fiery Temper, but now it can't kill the Thalia's Lieutenant, so I guess if they madnessed out the Fiery Temper on the Lieutenant and then we flash in the Champion, we get a nice bit of value. So yeah, probably a mistake there. A bit too hasty on the Champion. Alright, Renegade Rallier, so let's attack with both and hope to enable a Revolt. Maybe our opponent has another Fiery Temper they want to madness. Blocking with both. Discarding Bowman Courier, and Renegade Rallier is going to get back either the Lieutenant or the Thalia's Lieutenant. I guess Consul's Lieutenant is a bit better here. Just blocks the scrap heap nicely. Still have our Ajani. Opponent can get back the scrap heap if it dies now, since they have plenty of creatures in the graveyard. It's a nice place to be in, where every draw is live. I guess a tap land is not something we want, but there's only the 4 Evolving Wilds that come into play tapped at this point. Chandra, Torch of Defiance, is kind of a problem, since that can kill one of our creatures. I guess if they don't have anything else, the Lieutenant can finish off Chandra. Interesting attack by the scrap heap. So they could have a number of bump spells here that could be bad for us. So I guess we just take it. Because if we lose the Lieutenant, we can't pressure Chandra, and that's an easy way to lose this game. Alright, Declaration in Stone. Not exactly what we want here. So let's try to attack Chandra, hope our opponent doesn't have Shock or Fatal Push. But I guess if they had one of those, they probably would have killed our Lieutenants to start with. So if that works... Now, do we want to play the Declaration on the scrap heap? We would be giving our opponent an extra card, which is not great, but it does get rid of an annoying creature. I think we hold it and try to get rid of the scrap heap with Ajani first. If we find another cheap spell on top, we can Declaration plus play whatever we draw into. And Noxious Gearhulk, alright. So our opponent with quite a high curve for a red-black aggro deck. Explains why they were so eager to trade in the early game. So we could play Ajani now, but now our opponent has 2 threats, so if we play Ajani, they can kill Ajani with the remaining creature, which was kind of bad that we didn't play the Declaration on the scrap heap. But I think we can play the Declaration now on the Gearhulk instead. And I think we save the land in hand in case we find a Tireless Tracker off the top. We want to have that land get us some value in case we want to play the Tracker instead of Ajani. Scrap heap gets in. No play from the opponent, interesting. So they didn't even want to sack the clue to see if they could find something that they could play that turn, so must mean they have something in hand that they want to play. Otherwise that doesn't make a ton of sense. But I guess we're playing Ajani here on the scrap heap, now that the board is relatively clear. If our opponent has Burn to finish off Ajani, that would not be great for us, since we didn't get a ton of value out of it. But I think getting rid of Scrap Heap was a priority there. Alright, up Nixilis from the opponent, so it's a Planeswalker battle. But I don't think I mind, since Ajani can potentially draw a lot more cards than Ob Nixilis. Land is not what we need, so let's plus. And alright, that's pretty sweet. Found 2 creatures off of it. So we get to play, let's see, we've got 7 mana, so we can play a 2-drop plus Avacyn. I guess we play out the Hamlet Captain here. Save the Duskwatch Recruiter for later when we have more mana, since I do want to play Avacyn to pressure Ob Nixilis. Of course our opponent knows about Avacyn, so they're probably not gonna minus on the Hamlet Captain here. Inventor's Apprentice from the opponents, but no artifact to go with it. Nixilis pluses. I guess we could have played Duskwatch and started using the activated ability rather than play Avacyn into our opponent's removal spell. But then again, I do want to get Avacyn into play, so I guess we still go for it anyways. And we might see another disintegration here. Oh no, it's a Lightning Axe. And they do have to discard a card. Aether Hub. Alright. Renegade Rallier is interesting. So we could minus to get rid of the Apprentice, but Obnixilis is not gonna ultimate quite yet, so I think I just like attacking with the Hamlet Captain on Obnixilis, see what happens. It's a chum block. Let's plus once again. Find 2 more creatures. So our opponent knows about one of these Renegade Ralliers. Sure, I think we just play out both. The cards our opponent knows about. I don't think they will be playing any sweeper effects in this kind of deck. Another Lightning Axe on the Irregulars. I guess our opponent wants to untap so they can pay full price on the Lightning Axe. Alright, Sky Sovereign Consul Flagship, that's a pretty scary card here. Can take out our creature, we know our opponent has a Lightning Axe. And that flagship can also take out an Ajani pretty quickly. So our opponent's gonna save the Lightning Axe there, which is gonna help us enable Revolt on the second Renegade Rallier, so maybe a mistake from the opponent. So let's go ahead and plus once again on Ajani. Find another 2 creatures, so Ajani with a pretty good hit rate here. And let's go ahead and attack with both. On Obnixilis, I think. Although we could just go after our opponent's life total, but then our opponent can start minusing Obnixilis to kill our creatures, which is also not great. Yeah, but maybe just going after our opponent's life total, try and kill them quickly here is what we need to do. Is our opponent just gonna take 6? Didn't think so. So there's the Lightning Axe. But now we do have Revolt enabled on the Rallier, and they have Fiery Temper to go with it. Alright, never mind. So our opponents had it all. They stay at 7, but we do get to play Rallier to get back one of our 2-drops. And I probably messed this up. I probably should have waited and gotten back the Lieutenant to pump more than 1 creature. So I guess we get the Hamlet Captain instead. And then play out Thalia plus Duskwatch. Yeah, it was probably much better to play the Rallier in the end and then get back the Thalia's Lieutenant to pump the entire team. Our Ajani is not far away from ultimating here. And the opponent could ultimate Obnixilis if they want to, but I don't think the ultimate's really gonna matter. So they kill Thalia. Do they have a 3-powered creature to crew Sky Sovereign? They do. So they can actually take down Ajani here if they attack with Sky Sovereign and deal the 3 damage to Ajani. So our opponent's actually coming back, which is not what we wanted. Alright, instead they kill the Recruiter, so that does give us another chance of plussing Ajani. So we could minus Ajani to take out the Inspector, deny our opponent a 3-powered creature to crew Sky Sovereign with. Does gain our opponent 3 life again. So they would go back up to 10. If they don't have anything, they go to 4. Plus we play Duskwatch. So if they had Unlicensed Disintegration, I imagine they would have used it, otherwise they give us an extra chance of activating Ajani, so I don't think we need to play around Disintegration here. So let's go ahead and play the Recruiter here. Maybe we can find a creature that pumps a team. Alright, Selfless Spirit is not bad. I think I like that more than the Militia Captain. Although the Militia Captain would transform next turn. But let's take the Spirit. And let's minus on the Inspector. And I guess we do take out Obnixilis. And then hopefully we can still play the Spirit because our timer did kind of run out there. Otherwise we'll have to be happy activating the Duskwatch Recruiter. Alright, we did manage to play out Selfless Spirit. So Obnixilis down finally. Hopefully our opponent can't crew the Sky Sovereign here. And we can attack for the win. Alright, nothing from the opponents. I want to make sure to use the Duskwatch a bunch of times here. Alright, we miss. And let's use it once more. Find a champion. Could use it once again. I guess we do. And here we have a bunch of options. I guess we take the Militia Captain over the Castellan, since it's about as threatening, but a lot cheaper. Alright, then we can actually play the Militia Captain here. So let's do that now, just in case. Attack with everyone. Unlicensed Disintegration. Targeting the Selfless Spirit, so we can actually sacrifice it to prevent our opponent dealing 3 damage to us. Hamlet Captain pumps the Rallier, so we get in for 9, put the opponent to 1. Still have 4 creatures for the Militia Captain to transform on our upkeep. Unless our opponent can find a 3-powered creature. Instead it's a Smuggler Sculptor. And a Fiery Temper. So we're not gonna get to transform the Militia Captain, but we do get to attack for the win. So a very well fought battle from both sides. Duskwatch transforms back. Attack with everyone. And Heron's Grace Champion. It's gonna be pretty appropriate here. Attacking for the win, pumping the team. And that's gonna do it. Sweet, I wanna thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay. And as always, have a nice day.